the loose trousers gathered at the ankle that both sexes wore, and the wide-sleeved, open-collared shirt that was also a staple among the taledras. Good, strong dyes were readily available in the Vale, so the rich gold of his shirt and brown of his trousers were commonplace inside the Vale, though not necessarily in the Valdemaran lands beyond. But the embroidered, fitted vest he wore, though not of Valdemaran manufacture, was definitely of the local style. Of light brown leather, lined in darker brown silk, it was embroidered in a motif of owls. Once again, contradiction. The cut of the vest was Valdemaran. The motif was clearly taledras. So there it was, contradictions implied in his very dress, contradictions that sometimes confused others, but never confused him. For all the contradictions, Darian was comfortable in his dual citizenship, and sometimes took an impish delight in how uncomfortable it made others. He looked up at the sound of a crow's catcall just above his head, laughing when he saw a falcon playing tag with a crow, flying in and out of the branches. In open air, the falcon would have had the advantage, but not in among the trees. The streamer, trailing from the falcon's bracelets, was less than half its original length, but the crow still had most of his streamer and mocked the falcon enthusiastically. Both were bond birds, of course, the specially bred, highly intelligent companions of the Hawkbrothers, and the falcon seemed to be taking his imminent defeat in good humor. Crows took just about everything in good humor. Of all the birds bred by the Hawkbrothers as bond birds, the crows had the liveliest sense of humor. Ravens were more sardonic. Most of the falcons tended to be quick-witted but extremely focused. Hawks a little slower but more deliberate, and owls somewhat ponderous in their thinking. Darian's own bond bird was an owl. In fact, it was one of the largest birds in the Vale. Kuari was an eagle owl, a bird which dwarfed all other birds except the bond bird eagles. Since there were no taledras with eagles in this vale, Kuari and his parents, Wheel and Her, were the largest birds here. Now that the temperature was under control, the flora of the vale was in the process of undergoing a shift from what had been native to this place to plants and even trees that could only be found in taledras vales. There were more flowers. They were not necessarily bigger, but they bloomed all year long, their subtle perfume filling the air. The leaves of these new plants were enormous, and not just green. Veins traced scarlet pathways, and pinks and oranges and even blues made patterns that resembled flowers, enormous insects, or abstract collages on their surfaces. It would take a very long time before this vale looked anything like Kevala, several generations perhaps, but the beginnings were there, and Darian took a great deal of pleasure in seeing them. As he walked along the sand-softened pathway, he glanced up now and again, catching brief glimpses of new ekeles in the enormous trees. The tree houses of Kevaldamar were a bit more inventive than the ones in Kevala, perhaps spurred on by Herr Tassi creativity. There were experiments in Hawkbrother housing going on up there. Not all of them were successful, but the failure rate was low, and failures were never disasters. If one plan didn't work out, would-be home builder and Herr Tassi just put their heads together and tried a new direction. All this building had been spurred on by the existence of the Vale, making it possible to have ekeles that took full advantage of the constant balmy conditions. The hedonistic taledras loved it. So did those ubiquitous residents of established vales, the hummingbirds and messenger birds. Strictly off-limits as dinner or snacks for the predatory bond birds, these feathered gems frolicked fearlessly.